You're listening to Copper and Heat Radio. I'm Katy Osuna. In June of 2024, we headed to Napa, California for the first ever Cookbook Fest. It was a 3-day event that brought cookbook authors, food podcasters, and food lovers together. Guests got to enjoy some of the great food and wine that Napa is known for while having full days of everything from author book signings, publishing industry panel discussions, cooking demos, and a stage of live podcasts featuring cookbook authors. We were so stoked to be invited to host a live podcast conversation called The New Chef Cookbook on the main stage. My guests were Bricia Lopez, author of 2 cookbooks, 2019's Oaxaca, Home Cooking from the Heart of Mexico, and 2023's Asada, The Art of Mexican-Style Grilling, and Brandon Skyer, who is better known by his social media handle Sad Poppy, and just published his first cookbook, Make It Fancy, Cooking at Home with Sad Poppy. This episode was recorded by the team at Feast It Forward, the venue where Cookbook Fest was held. Feast It Forward is an awesome festival venue in downtown Napa, and the podcast stage was outside, which was a beautiful visual setting, but not quite ideal for audio recording, complete with the Napa wine train interrupting us a few times.
Let's go! Hey-yo!
But I am still so excited to share this great conversation that I had with Bricia and Brandon, where we touched on everything from the ins and outs of bringing a cookbook to life to what they think the differences between a chef and a home cook are, and how bridging that gap informed their books. Enjoy!
Thank y'all so much for coming. I've just been told to put the mics close to our face.
Okay,
so.
close. I can do that.
Thank y'all so much for coming and listening to our talk. We're going to talk about the new chef cookbook, which I'm very excited to be joined by these lovely guests. We're recording at the Cookbook Fest in Napa, California. Give it up, Cookbook Fest, please. We're so excited to be here. And I'm going to turn it over to my guests. If you could briefly introduce yourselves, but also if you could introduce your books by talking a little bit briefly about the title of your books.
I'm Brandon Skyer. I'm a restaurant worker of 12 years. And then when COVID hit, I made the switch to social media. And now I post food content full time. And then I just came out with a book, Make It Fancy. It came out in March. And it's all about bridging the gap between home food and restaurant cooking. So it's some restaurant techniques applied to more available ingredients. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bricia. What do I say about myself? Let's see. I run a restaurant with my siblings in LA. It's called Guelaguetza. And I also run a michelada company with my brother. And I don't know, what else? My book, this is my second book. It's Asada, which is all about Mexican-style grilling and just like the carne asada lifestyle of Los Angeles, you know?
I love it. Thank you
LA
so much
girl.
for being here. Give it up for a guest. Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
chatting with me. And I'm going to start it off. My favorite thing about cookbooks is really the memoir aspect and, really hearing more about the point of view of the person that's writing it. And I think that really comes across in your cookbooks. And so I wanted to kind of take it back to the beginning a little bit. Both of y'all talk about how your dad's really inspired a lot of your work and how that kind of got you into food and restaurants specifically. And maybe inspired is the wrong word because, Bricia, I'm going to start with you. You did not want to work in restaurants. No. You hated restaurant work. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and if there was a specific moment or realization where you're like, oh, actually, I do want to do this.
Of course, I remember the exact moment. Well, I grew up in the restaurant. I mean, we moved to LA when I was 9 years old from Oaxaca. So we grew up in Oaxaca and I grew up in a beautiful home with an incredible mom who would cook every single day for me and 3 times a day. And she was a wonderful homemaker. And then we moved to LA. My parents opened a restaurant and that became every single day I had to be at the restaurant since the age of 10 until being on anymore. But it's every weekend we couldn't get sick. We couldn't go on vacation. I remember waking up And if I felt ill, my dad would be like, "You're not sick. You're just, you're just lazy. Get up. You got to go to work." So I'm like, okay. So I think I grew up in this kind of love-hate relationship with the restaurant because I felt like it robbed me a lot of time with my, parents. Like now looking back, it was the most wonderful school I could have asked for. But and when the economic recession hit, when everyone lost their homes and the whole system collapsed, my dad lost everything, and he had to close down all the restaurants. He had to declare bankruptcy. He was moving to Mexico, and then there was one restaurant left standing, and then we just decided like there was no way that we were going to let like my family's legacy just go to waste, just like disappear. It was just so crazy. And also it was like, wait, and I have to go find a job somewhere. I was like, wait, no, that something didn't like sound right. So we're like, I think instead we'll just run this, restaurant. And it's been quite a journey. I mean, it's been, I think 11 years since we took over the business, and my parents are retired in Mexico, but it's just, I think it was the time when I stopped seeing it as a job, and I was like, oh, this is like my life. And I had like a mission of just preserving my family's culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's beautiful. So Brandon, you also mentioned that you were around food a lot growing up, your dad and your grandpa.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I think I hear that story a lot from cooks. Like, I grew up around food. I love food. My grandma, my grandpa. But there's something else about restaurant work that like really draws people in. At least that was my experience. And some different people that I've talked to have said kind of the same thing. Like, what was it about the environment of working in a restaurant specifically that was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that with my life?
My first career was actually, I started working in body shops when I think I was like 13. It was before I had a worker's permit, but I started working on cars. And then I had the surrounding growing up with food with my dad and my grandpa. And then I was really good at working on cars. I worked up to a painter's assistant, and then I was a painter, and then I worked up to a technician's assistant, and then I got promoted to a parts and production manager. So by the time I was 17, I was making a very cushy living, making more money than I could spend at that age. But I hated it. And I was sitting at a desk and I was doing orders, and like at least when I was an assistant or a technician, I could work with my hands and I could do something. And it was fast paced, and like I had a schedule and I had a deadline. And I think I just thrive in that kind of environment. And I was done with high school, and I was like, do I want to continue working on cars? And I was like, absolutely not. I love food. So I quit my cushy position, and then I took a minimum wage fry cook job. And then I got a second job doing pastries in the morning somewhere else. And I was just honest. I was like, I have zero experience. But like, just start me where you think I'll be good, and then I'll work my way up. And then I did. And then I never looked back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something else that I hear from a lot of folks is, that passion piece is really important. And this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but as far as, having that passion and, this is my life's work, do you feel like that's kind of a hard thing to balance sometimes with, like taking care of yourself? And that's something that we hear a lot in the restaurant industry right now.
Absolutely. Especially while I was in the restaurant industry, and still to a degree now.
Yeah.
I would be so hyper focused on work, and I would have my blinders on. I would only eat family meal. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't really eat outside of work. I wasn't sober at the time either. Mm-hmm. So, trying to balance my hangover and then working a double and then working brunch the next day. Mm-hmm. It was very easy to fall behind and not take care of yourself. And then, especially mentally, it's a very high stress environment. So, nowadays that I make my own schedule, it's much better, and I can take some time and self-care. And if I'm not feeling it, I can be like, I don't want to do this today. But in the restaurant industry, it's a lot harder. Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure from everybody else for sure. Bricia, similar to you, you're doing so many different things. Like I don't know how you do all of it, but yeah, how about you, now that you've kind of, I think you said you kind of stepped back a little bit from being day to day at the restaurant. So
yeah, well, the restaurant my sister runs our operations full time. Mm-hmm. I'm still very involved in a lot of aspects of the business, but I think for me, people say that to me all the time. Like, you do so much. I'm like, do I? I don't know. I mean, I guess this is fun. I love what I do. I love what I do. I love everything. So I think like when I'm doing the things, it's just like my life. When every day, there isn't like there's not like a distinction. Yeah, sure. There's days I have to go to the office and I have office days and I have my team and, there's work, but I don't know. I just love what I do so much and I just find so much joy in it. But I think taking care of yourself is extremely important. And, I think that there's days where I cry a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel that. Yeah.
A good cry can help it all. That's all you need. A good cry. Yes.
That is very true. Well, Brandon, you also mentioned this, and this is something that I think a lot about, and we talk about a lot on the show, but the money aspect of it. So you all have both obviously grown a food businesses and a career in food, but like the worst kept secret in the restaurant industry is like there's not a lot of money in it. That whether you're like working in the restaurant or you're an owner and operator, and like profit margins are just terrible.
Horrible.
And, at the same time, it's really interesting that chef culture has kind of gained a lot of notoriety and people like want to know what's going on in the restaurant, but only so much.
Yeah.
And, there's these like two forces that are acting together to kind of create this very, very interesting dynamic between people who work in restaurants and the people that are like consuming the food or the culture or whatever. And, it's really cool and interesting to see how many opportunities outside of the kitchen or outside of the restaurant that people can do now, like what you both are doing now. And what I think was really fascinating is that you both were approached by agents or publishers to do your books. And so there was enough of a demand that they're like, oh, we want you to do this thing. So what was going through your heads when you were approached by these people to do this other thing that was, different, it seems like, than what you were doing?
Well, for me, I was just a line cook and then I was like a grease monkey my whole life. Writing was never like my strong suit. So I was a little apprehensive. And I had a couple sit down or virtual meetings and they walked me through the process and I felt a little bit more comfortable. And they were like, we're going to have a co-writer help you out and like, cross your T's and dot your I's, help you out with that.
Can you tell me a little bit more about those conversations and kind of like what made you feel better about doing it besides, okay, you're going to have somebody there. Did they kind of reassure you in different ways about it?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I was a little apprehensive. I mean, obviously it was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Coming just straight out of a restaurant to then doing social media.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is a little bit of a question mark for sure. You don't know when your next paycheck is going to be and you're kind of just floating and, hoping that you continue your little hype train.
Yeah.
So having something a little bit more concrete is definitely appealing.
Yeah.
And then also around the same time, a lot of my friends also got approached to do cookbooks.
Mm.
So just talking to them and like seeing what their process was was also definitely reassuring.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And Bricia?
So the question is what was going through my mind.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So many things. I mean, I think that when I first was approached for what was about 10 years ago, I wrote my first book in 19. It came out in 19, which is crazy. It's 5 years. It's my first cookbook.
Wow.
And I just didn't really understand like what people I don't understand. I just didn't really get it. But I had a wonderful agent. He's here somewhere. I don't know if he's here or not anymore. Oh, there he is. Yay, Jonah. He came to the restaurant and said, I think that, you have a wonderful story, your family's story. No one's really done a cook on Oaxaca. And then I started researching and I realized that there were no Oaxacan cookbooks. So there was one, but it wasn't written like someone who was from Oaxaca, So I just felt like that was like the story needed to be told. And honestly, it was just like a selfish, like for me to have my family's legacy on print that I could just hand over, my son can read it. He's 9, he can read it and he can read his family's story and then he can recreate his grandmother's recipes. Like that's so, that's why I did that first book. It was just so beautiful to just kind of encapsulate that. I know it was wonderful. I mean, I think that people really were receptive to the story, and it was a great process. I moved to Oaxaca for a couple months with but my son was way younger back then, and we just moved, him and I, and we'd like cook with my mom every single day, and writing out the recipes. And a lot of people always tell me, "How do you do it? Like, how did you?" Every time I ask my mom her recipe, she's just like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, my mom's the same, but I would just stand next to her and I would measure everything, and then I would really develop them in LA, just because we were living in Oaxaca, make sure they both translated. So it was really fun. I mean, I had the best time writing books. It's so fun.
Yeah. That's something that I wanted to ask both of you, because obviously you kind of came at food from a varying journey. But were cookbooks ever a thing that, like, when you were younger, you were like really into cookbooks or reading cookbooks? Was that a big part of it, where you're like, this was a newer thing that you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could even do this?
Well, for me, it wasn't like cookbooks per se, but my mom, so we grew up in Oaxaca, and there's these magazines that they sell, and they're just full of recipes, and these are like salsas or, like ensaladas. So it's like the one that's all there is. Like my mom, I mean, I have those now. I have so many of these magazines that my mom has. And then there was one I remember the specific cookbook, and I would look at it all the time as desserts. And it was by a brand called La Lechera, and it obviously probably free or something.
Yeah.
And then I would it was falling apart, but my mom would like cherish this one book, and we would just like go through it, and we would do a lot of pastries together. We would do a lot of gelatinas together. But like the flan picture was, I just like read it in my mind, and it's like the La Lechera logo always, so. Yeah, no books, not a lot of books, but a lot of magazines. And then my mom, when we moved to LA, my mom became obsessed with Martha Stewart. So she would buy all the Martha Stewart magazines, and she would recreate Martha Stewart recipes all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I love for Thanksgiving too.
Oh, I love that. Funny how that works out.
Shout out to Martha Stewart.
I was a huge cookbook fan beforehand. My dad was a line cook when he was my age. And then he already had his collection of cookbooks, and then like I started working in the restaurant industry, and it's kind of like a thing. You go to like eat at a restaurant, like if you have a cookbook, you just pick it up.
Yeah.
And I had stacks and stacks and stacks of restaurant cookbooks before I even started doing social media or got approached to do my own book. So I think that was the biggest bombshell for me like when my book got published, and I went to a bookstore and I saw it right next to a Gordon Ramsay book.
Oh my God.
I was like, this is a trip. So, I mean, I think that's where like a lot of the apprehension came from. It's just like the expectations of like what's going to happen afterwards. But I love cookbooks.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm kind of hearing is a little bit of like the imposter syndrome thing, which is like what I think about a lot is just like feeling like, oh, that, I didn't know the expectations, the pressure of like what people expect.
Yeah, especially in the restaurant industry, it's like you start at the bottom and you work your way all the way up.
Yeah.
And, I worked at some pretty nice restaurants, but, I never opened my own place, and I never ran my own place or anything like that. So to have my book be next to a very well-established chef is definitely a little bit of a, like, what? But yeah, overall, it all worked out, and it's really cool. And then me and Gordon are friends now, so that's cool.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well, I want to come back to, talking a little bit more about like what it means to be a chef. And I know this is coming. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you were kind of expecting going into writing these books, and kind of what you learned along the way. Since Brandon, this is your first book. Congrats. That's very exciting. And, trying to translate what happens in restaurants for a home cook is wild to me. Like, I feel like that's something that is really, really hard. Obviously, you've been doing a lot of that through TikTok and the videos, which is awesome. But were there any like specific recipes or techniques that you had a really hard time trying to translate from, that restaurant vibe to the home cook?
I think sauce work. I think just sauce work in general is very hard to translate via text because like a lot of it is visual and a lot of it is taste and consistency. And, was your beef stock good? If you're trying to make a bordelaise and you start reducing it down, but like the aromatics kind of like die off, like adding another bay leaf or adding another sprig of thyme or something like that. Like that's something that I would know to do, but like putting that in the book and like having people do it by their own taste and their own judgment is very hard to put in text. So a lot of the sauce work was very difficult for me, and I tried to be very thorough and step by step. And
Is that where the co-writer kind of came in to like be like, okay, no, explain that to me, or was this something you were doing?
Yeah,
on
the
your own?
co-writer was very helpful with clarifications because she was not a cook.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
having someone who was not a cook
Yeah.
go through the recipe and be able to follow it, I think was very helpful in the writing process.
Fascinating.
For sure, especially with like more advanced recipes like sauce work or dehydrations or fermentations or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bricia, this is obviously your second book. And so what was something that you kind of took away from the process of doing your first book that you were like, okay, I need to remember this for the next time that I do this? Like, were there any specific things that you were like, oh God, I need to remember this?
My agent hates hearing this, but I realized I can make a book real quick. Not like I'm not rushing, but I think that a lot of people say, oh, it took me 2 years to write the book. I'm like, did it though? Like, out of those 2 years, like how many days do you actually work on it? So I realized that all you really need is, all I did was just a book and I did nothing else. Like I locked myself in my house and I just cooked and recipe developed and wrote and like just did everything. And then I would kidnap my writer. I was like, okay, you cannot leave here for the next, I told him to move in too, but he didn't want to. His wife wasn't happy about that. I was like, fine, you can come every morning. I think that when I kind of learned that about myself, I'm like, okay, if I just dedicate myself to one thing for a few weeks, the book was done.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's not rushed, but like, I just know what know what I wanted and I just wanted to get. I'm like, there's no point of prolonging it.
Okay. So you knew exactly kind of what you wanted going into it. Did you have any difficulties in trying to like figure out any of the recipes or develop any of the recipes, or it was like, no, these are all recipes I already do and I just need to put it into a paper?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in my mind I knew what the menu, like in the second book I already knew what I would sell. I don't sell what I would serve at an asada with my family.
Right.
Obviously extended version. Obviously I wouldn't do a 110 spread, but just and ideas that would just come in.
Yeah.
And then ones I kind of like laid it out differently than Oaxaca too. And what I did first, I actually did an entire recipe, the list of recipes I wanted to do. And then I just went one by one until like they were all done.
Yeah.
Before in Oaxaca, I would skip, but I'd be like, I don't want to do the mullet today because it was like daunting. I don't want to do that. And I would just go back and forth. And I just went like, recipe by recipe.
Just did it all. Just knocked it out. Wow. Yeah, that's wild. I want to talk a little bit more about that process.
And then we shot it too in like 5 days.
That's my next question is, shooting it, like cooking things is one thing, but actually, going through the process of making it and then making it look pretty and then having to shoot it and then like, oh my God, the ice is melting, so we need to do it again. Or like, doing different things like that for both of you. Did you have kind of a vision in mind as far as the aesthetics went? And like, that was something that you had to fight for? And like, what was that process like, doing all the photography and cooking and doing all that at the same time?
For both of my books, I just wanted things to be real. My photographer is incredible, Quentin. He's so great. And most of my book is just parties that I had with friends. So everything we cook was eaten. Everything we did was done.
That's awesome.
We did 3 asadas, 1 in the park, 2 in my house, and he shot them all. And like that, like, well, that's why, but we did have 3 days of, I guess I would say like posy photos. But then everything got saved and then served at a party or something. Yeah. My parents would come over and would eat, but I just wanted the book to feel as real as possible. Oaxaca was the same way. It was all shot in Oaxaca. It was all sort of like my mom made food for us and that's what we shot.
Right.
Because I think people can really see that through I mean, it's art, right? So I think people can really see if it's fake food or if it was real. And I just wanted mine to be real.
Yeah, totally. 100%. And Brandon, I mean, it seems like yours was a different vibe because they were very like composed dishes and a lot of different components. And I loved the pantry chapter. That was awesome. So can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So before I even went into the photo shoot, I made and plated each one of those dishes probably about 10 times. The cannelés, I did that recipe 20 times before I was like actually happy with the recipe.
Yeah.
So I already had a very clear vision of what I wanted everything to look like. And then going into the photo shoot, we actually did it in my apartment.
Wow.
Yeah, we did it in my apartment. I did all the cooking, all the prep, all the food styling. And then because I was looking at the costs for food stylists and a team to do that with the photographer, and it was whoa. And all of that comes out of your budget.
Yeah, right.
Your advance. So I was like, I'm going to save myself a little money. I don't care if I have to work a little bit harder. So we did it in my apartment. I did everything. And then the photographers did the props and the photos. It was a really hard 2 weeks, and then it was all over.
2 weeks is quick, I feel like. I mean, you're both talking about it like,
I shot mine like 4 days.
yeah, that's wild to me.
Yeah, so it was 5 days on, and then we took a break so I could prep the next 5 days. And then we were done.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, kind of shifting, you mentioned, Bricia, like that it's an art. The cookbook is an art. And this is another thing that I always loved talking to cooks and chefs about, is cooking an art or a craft or both? Is it a medium to express yourself, or is it like a trade? It's everything.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why? Yeah. Why? I
don't think it's one thing, right? It's just a way of living. I think like, I mean, you need food to survive, right? And then you can either have it taste good or not.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, yeah, it's an art. I mean, it's 100% an art. Yeah, it's 100%. I think also trade that, people make a great living of it. Oh, right. I don't know if it's a great living anymore, but depends on who you ask.
Right.
But I think it's beautiful. I think being able to serve someone something delicious that's, yes, made with your hands, but actually comes from your soul and your heart. It's just, the best expression of love.
Totally. Yeah. Brandon.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, because if you look at someone that just makes bread, like that takes a lot of knowledge and a lot of skill and a lot of know-how, and then especially to do it in bulk. That by itself, it could take someone a lifetime to learn that, and they might not even be very good at it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just bread. And then if you look at something, like running a restaurant, fast casual restaurant, like that's definitely trade work, like managing all those moving parts, it's organized chaos. And then if you go to restaurants, like Alinea, like that's definitely art, the way that they play, the things that they do with food, yeah. So I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
It's also a form of communication. Like if your partner is sick, you make them a bowl of soup,
Yeah. I think that's really beautiful. It's yeah, like I said, it's something that I love to ask people, because I think some people are very opinionated one way or the other, but I really like what y'all said, because I think that is true. Like you can't put it in a box, because it is essential to life and also a medium of self-expression for so long.
Yeah.
And, part of everybody's identity as well. And which leads me to my next question. Is about the title and role of chef. And we talk about this a lot on our podcast, because people have a lot of feelings and opinions and perspectives on, what is a chef and the importance of the title of chef, whether or not people call themselves a chef versus a cook. And really, like, what is that difference between a chef and a home cook, like a professional chef and a home cook? And cookbooks have kind of always been that, at least one medium for chefs to kind of come into the home and, teach people how to cook better. Maybe not better, but, differently. Yeah, just cook. And it is funny that, at this time, there are less and less people that want to work in restaurants right now, but people still really love food. Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, oh, actually, this is terrible. I make no money. I might have a passion for food, but there are so many other ways for me to do this for a living. But people are also still really fascinated by the restaurant industry and by chefs in particular and chef culture. So, there's this tension.
Is it because of the bear? Everybody wants a chef.
I was going to say, yeah. Everybody wants to be, yes, chef.
And having worked in places like that, it's like, I personally did not feel like I was learning a lot as far as techniques go, like Brandon, the ones that are in your book and things like that. I learned a lot, but I didn't feel like I was like connecting with the food in a way that like I really wanted to. And that's like not why I got into cooking.
Right.
And, but there is this like constant tension of like, okay, we want to legitimize the work in the restaurant. We want to, be able to make it like, okay, people get, paid more. They get like paid time off, things like that, like legitimize the career of working in restaurants. But there's like this kind of interesting tension and dichotomy of chefs having to try and like prove their value, or cooks trying to like prove their value by distinguishing themselves from home cooks. I don't know if what I just said kind of made sense, but it's something that I hear a lot while talking to people about like, okay, do you call yourself a chef? And everybody's like, no, I can't call myself a chef. And it's like, well, why not? So let me turn that on you both. Do you call yourselves chefs?
Yeah.
Or what do you call yourselves? And why?
No, I don't. I mean, I never went to culinary school. And I've never worked in other restaurant kitchens other than my own. So I think for that reason, I can't say that I'm a chef, but people call me chef all the time, and I'm like, okay. And they tell me the same thing, like, well, why can't you know, like kind of what you say, they tell you, oh, but you shouldn't use that word because, it is, fabricated by blah, blah, blah. I don't know. People have opinions all the time.
100%.
I'm really not, I have so many things to worry about life. But, but I think because I didn't go to culinary school and I didn't work in restaurant kitchens other than my own restaurant, that's why I don't like to call myself chef. But I mean, if people call me chef, I'm like, yes, hi. Yeah, yes, that's me. Yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it does. I don't call myself a chef because I don't really care for it. And I don't really care for the term in the first place. And then to me, a chef is like just a job title, like it's just a manager position. Like nothing more, nothing less to me. Like you come in, you cook a little bit. That's the thing is like people don't know that chefs are actually out of the kitchen more than they're in the kitchen. They're in the office, they're doing payroll, they're looking at their, their reports, they're looking at, schedules, and they're doing all that nonsense. You're actually not in the kitchen as much as you think you are. And I just never really cared for it. So I just consider myself a cook. But it's fascinating how the like the word chef, it has this like allure to it. And I think it started with Food Network way back in the day, like Iron Chef, and then Next Level Chef, and then Top Chef, and then Gordon Ramsay's like Master Chef, and all these competition shows. It became cool because it was on TV.
Totally.
And then even in culinary school, there was a lot of people who never worked in a kitchen in like a day in their life. And then they go to culinary school and they decide they don't like it and they drop out, or they graduate and then they're like, yeah, I finally got into a restaurant and I didn't make enough money, so now I work at Home Depot. And I've just heard so many stories like that. But it's very cool to be a chef, but I feel like for the most part, a lot of people don't really know what it entails.
Right.
Yeah.
I think at the same time though, I think like being with a chef, like my partner's a chef, and like the level of just commitment to the craft, and like level of just not being able to stop cooking because that's all, like, you love it so much. Like I think it's like, like it's like I think like it's a whole different levels of chefing. I think there's levels. I think like anything in life is like a spectrum, but to be able to be with someone who can actually like chef like Michelin star chef, like they're gonna be chefs,
and that's what I think is so fascinating about the term and like the way that people feel about it. I saw this I can't remember if it was a meme or a response to an Ask Me Anything the other day by Hannah Souza, who does Lady Line Cook's account, and she's hilarious and talks a lot about this kind of stuff. But she posted in there that like this title of chef, it's like so bizarre that there are people, maybe not bizarre, it's just like, it's a very interesting thing that there are a lot of chefs that are like, no, you must call me chef, and you must respond, yes, chef. And we kind of hold this term so sacred in the industry, or at least some people do. And it's really funny because I always use this example because my mother-in-law, best cook I know. She has an incredible palate. She can taste anything and figure out what's in it and then completely recreate it based off of memory. She has worked professionally doing like catering things like that. And she's just like the most incredible chef. And I call her a chef because she likes to be like, no, you're a chef. And I'm like, am I though? Like, no, you're a chef. And so we always have this little thing. So I think it is it's hard and it's a little bit gatekeepy for people to be like, no. Just because you didn't go to culinary school doesn't mean that you're not a chef. Like, I went to culinary school, and I think you wrote this in your book too, Brandon. Like, I don't know that I learned that much in culinary school.
Yeah, I did.
That made me a better quote unquote chef. And I think there's lots of different ways to become a chef, and that passion, the skills, and all of that are much more important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think that the title is that important.
Yeah.
Like the chef title, like I just don't think it's that important. Like, it's okay to be a cook. Like, it's totally okay. I just don't understand like the respect that people think that title demands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's interesting. Anyway, I could talk about this forever, but we'll kind of skip to the next part of my question, which is, so what is the main difference between a home cook and a chef? And Brendan, I really liked what you wrote in your book, which is like the pantry. The pantry is the main difference.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the main difference between restaurants and like home cooks is restaurants will just have an endless supply of crunchies, toppings, pickles, ferments, sauces, condiments, just like flowing all the time, because it's something that you can make once and then you can use it 50 different times. And it's like really low effort to really elevate a dish. And like having a good repertoire of like pantry items, and like it even helps with like preserving food. Like if you have like a bunch of like haricot beers, like green beans, and you're like, what do I do with these? And it's like, let's ferment them. Why not? If you know how to do that, cool. I think a really good, well-stocked pantry is like what separates a lot of home cooks from like restaurant kitchens.
It's interesting. What do you think, Bricia?
The difference between home cooks and restaurant chefs. I mean, stress, money, stress. I mean, I think running a kitchen is hard. People trying to make it in the industry as a restaurant owner, cook, like it's really difficult. It's it's more fun being a cook at home, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. Having been out of like the actual restaurant for a little while now, doing the food media thing, I'm like, there are times I miss it.
I love, like, sometimes I go to my restaurant and I'm like there. I'm like, God, it's like time just goes by so much faster here. And I was like, it's the rush of everything, But I mean, how much can you take that,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it does take a toll.
Yes, very much so.
And it's great, and it's also
that's when you cry.
And that's when you cry in the walk-in usually. Yeah, 100%. So, kind of going back to talking about the cookbooks and trying to translate what you do in the restaurants for home cooks, like what I guess I'm asking a similar question to what I asked earlier, but like, what was the most challenging for you thinking about writing for that audience of like a home cook? What's the most challenging part of that?
I don't know if I found anything like,
or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not challenging at all.
I think that it's for me this one was about grilling, so it was a lot more of like how, like, the difference between grills and what what you need to have. I think it's just I really enjoy communicating with people, and I think this is like a beautiful way to communicate a little bit more about not just the food, but like my culture and what it's like to be in an asada. So for me, it was more, I really wanted to make it approachable, so people could really pick up this book and say, I want to do my own asada too, So for me, it was more about, I wanted to make it as approachable as possible.
Right.
I think accessibility was the number one point for me.
Yeah.
Coming from like fine dining, like you work with a lot of really random ingredients. People really love oxalis and like all kinds of stuff like that people just generally can't get that much. So accessibility was the number one thing for me. I managed to sneak in a couple of things, like caviar limes, and stuff like that. But when I was writing the book, I was like, can I find this at the grocery store? Can most people find this at the grocery store? And is it going to be easy and accessible to make for like 90% of people?
Right.
So that was my starting point. And then, like I said, I managed to get a couple things in.
Yeah.
Like caviar lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my last kind of official question, but what were you hoping that people would get out of your book, like walk away with? And if there was like one thing that you hope that they take away from reading your book, what is it?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to encourage everyone to just, get into the Asada lifestyle and drink some micheladas and have some good tacos. Like, yes, right? Like, what is life without those things? And like, you're already going to eat. Why don't you just make it good? You're already going to have a beer, make it a michelada. Like, why not? You're already going to have a taco, make it the best one. Put some extra salsa on there. Do all the things. Do just grill the cactus, grill the cebollitas, put the lime in top. Yeah, I just wanted people to just have fun and just discover more ways of cooking Mexican food, which there are endless.
I love that.
For me, as long as someone walked away after reading the book learning one new technique that they can then apply to a bunch of other things, I would be completely happy. That's why the pantry and the ferments and all of that is such a large chapter. And I left all of it open-ended. So where people can just use it wherever they want and they can just like grow their own home cooking on their own terms.
Yeah.
So really kind of just like leveling up the way you think about things you probably already have laying around.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we kind of close up, can you just let everybody know, where to get your book, how to get your book?
You can get our book right here.
Right
on
here.
the bookstore.
For those, I guess I should say, for those listening, where they can get your book.
everywhere books are
Also.
everywhere books are sold.
Excellent. And then a little bit more about where we can find like your other work as well.
You can just find me on the Instagram, Bricia Lopez. That's everything. Or ilovemole.com is my restaurant, and ilovemicheladas.com is my michelada brand.
Love it. Thank you.
And then you can find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold, pretty much. And then you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok.
Awesome. What's your handle?
I
Sad
think
Poppy.
people know this, but okay. Awesome. Thank you both so much. And thank you all so much for coming here and listening and everything. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yay. Let's go, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you so much to Cookbook Fest for inviting us to participate in the first ever event. We had such a blast. And thank you to Bricia and Brandon for taking the time to talk with us. This episode was recorded by the team at Feast It Forward. If you like what you hear and you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing, follow us in your favorite podcast app or on social media at Copper and Heat. Thanks so much for listening.